best way to cook dried beans for the best results? Is it really necessary to soak beans overnight? Is there a quicker way to cook beans to get the same results? I'm going to attempt to answer some of these questions today. Unsurprisingly, people on the internet have lots of opinions on how to cook beans, with tons of myths and old wives' tales about what is required to make the best batch. There are so many different ways to cook beans that it's virtually impossible for me to test them all, but I'm gonna give a few of them a go to figure out the best basic method. And at the end, hopefully we'll discover if soaking beans is necessary at all, and if adding salt does anything to add to or inhibit the process. And if you're new here, I'm Maggie. This is No Frills Kitchen, where I teach you how to cook with confidence with nothing fancy required.
This test starts the night before, where I set up some soaks for some of the batches of beans. I'm cooking 7 different batches of beans for this video. I was considering doing more, but my husband and video editor had to hold me back because I think I was getting a bit too enthusiastic. So I'm soaking 3 different batches of beans, one of which is in salt water. I'm dissolving 10 grams of salt in half a liter of cold water. Then I'm adding 100 grams of dried white beans. I'm using white beans in this experiment, but the results should apply to any variety of dried bean or chickpeas. To set up my other test for the overnight soaking method, I'm measuring out 100 grams of dried white beans and then covering them with 500 mils of cool water. All right, I'm off to bed and ready to cook an obscene amount of beans tomorrow. Okay, 12 hours later and the soaked beans are ready to cook. We will start with the first test. This one will be the beans soaked in plain water, and I'll add salt at the end. After draining and rinsing the beans, I'm going to add them to a small saucepan and cover with a liter of water. Now I'm going to slowly bring these up to a boil. Now that it's boiling, I'm going to skim some of the foam off the top with a spoon. According to the package instructions, beans soaked overnight should take 35 minutes to cook through once boiling. So I'm going to leave these to simmer until they're cooked through and tender. Okay, it has been about 35 minutes, so I'm just going to test these beans to make sure that they're done. And we're good to go. Because unseasoned beans are terrible, I am going to go ahead and add 10 grams of salt to the beans now and stir that in to dissolve it. Many people will swear that adding salt at any other time will prevent the beans from cooking all the way through, or will result in tough beans. So that's what we're testing for. Let me know in the comments if you've ever noticed a difference between salting and not salting beans when cooking. Now I'm gonna go ahead and drain these before moving on to test 2. All right, this is going to be the same overall method, but I'll add the salt at the beginning. So here's my 100 grams of soaked dried beans, 1 liter of cool water, and 10 grams of salt. Now I'll bring all of this up to a simmer. Skim the foamy bits off the boiling beans and then let them go until cooked. All right, after about 35 minutes again, these beans are nice and tender, so I'll drain them and move on. Now onto my beans brined overnight. Because the 10 grams of salt was added last night, I won't be adding anything additionally to the beans when cooking. So I'm simply covering them with a liter of water and bringing to a boil. After skimming, I'll let them simmer until tender, which again was around 35 minutes this time.
Okay, so these are the beans that were soaked overnight and cooked. So we're gonna see which one is the best out of this test. All right, batch 1. Okay, kind of bland, evenly cooked. They seem fine. All right, let's jump in on these ones. These ones are better than that. More evenly seasoned. If I'm gonna guess, I think this is the one that was salted, but we'll see. We will try this one now. These ones have the best texture, but they're about as bland as these ones. So I'm gonna say that this one is my favorite flavor. This one is my favorite texture. But if I was gonna be choosing, I would choose this one, the middle one, as my favorite, which is soaked overnight and then cooked with salt at the beginning. All right, that makes sense. The salt is able to permeate the beans easier. The ones with the, I think these are brined overnight. Yeah, these are the ones who are brined, have a really good texture. I wonder if it would be better to brine them overnight and then add salt, but I can't test for everything. I made so many beans, so I'm gonna say salting is the best out of this batch.
Okay, now let's say that you forgot to soak your beans last night and you need to cook them today. A quick internet search will likely lead you to the quick soak method, which is what we're trying next. So I've put 100 grams of dried beans in the same pot and covered with cold water. Now I'll bring it up to a rolling boil, kill the heat, cover, and let it hang out for an hour. After an hour, I'm going to go ahead and drain the water from this. Okay, so these beans will be a test with salt added at the end, so all I'm going to do now is cover them with a liter of cold water and bring it to a boil. Now I'll let them simmer until they're tender. And after, again, about 35 minutes, they're cooked all the way through, so this did take just as long as the overnight soaked beans. Now I'll stir in the salt, drain them, and move on. Test 2 in the quick soak method starts exactly the same as the previous test. I'm going to cover the dried beans with cool water and then bring it up to a rolling boil. Then I'll kill the heat, cover, and let soak for 1 hour. An hour later, I'll go ahead and drain off the soaking water. Now I'll add 1 liter of fresh cool water, and this time I'll also stir in 10 grams of salt. Now I'll cook the beans until they're tender. Again, these beans have taken about 35 minutes to get to a fully cooked stage.
Okay, so these are the beans that did the quick soak test. So let's give them a quick taste and see which one's the best. Evenly cooked, fine texture, pretty bland. That's a pretty bland bean. Wouldn't really want to eat like a whole batch of that plain. These ones are nicely seasoned, really good texture. So I'm gonna go with this one as being my favorite of this batch. And that is cooked with salt, which I probably could have told you by tasting it. Much better.
These tests are the easiest of them all and require no advanced planning. So first off, I'm simply going to add 100 grams of dried beans to the pot. Now I'm going to cover with cool water and slowly bring this all to a boil. According to the package, these beans are supposed to be cooked all the way through in 50 minutes when not soaked overnight. So we'll see how long it takes. For these, it was a little bit closer to an hour before they were cooked through, so soaking definitely does cut down on the cook time. I'm going to go ahead and stir in the 10 grams of salt here and then drain and move on. All right, on to the final test. I'm going to add 100 grams of dried beans to the pot and cover with a liter of cool water. Now I'll stir in the 10 grams of salt and bring this up to a boil. All I need to do now is continue to cook these until they're tender. Again, this took about an hour. Let me drain this off and I'll go ahead and do a taste test of this method.
Alrighty. Interesting. Okay. These are really nicely seasoned. I'll say it's a bit unevenly cooked. Some beans are softer than others. All right, we'll try this one and see. Bland again. It tastes like some beans are more cooked than others. The other thing I will say is that these two did take about 20 minutes longer to cook than the other two batches. So this one's definitely my favorite. And this one is, okay, no soak, cooked with salt. I could tell you it was cooked with salt. It tastes pretty good. So basically I've determined that all 3 of the best ones are cooked with salt at the beginning. It doesn't inhibit the cooking process and it also more deeply seasons the bean. So I'm gonna test all 3 of the ones that I chose from each batch to see which one actually reigns supreme out of all of it. So we will start with numero uno. Okay, yep, that's nicely cooked, nicely seasoned, nice batch of beans. Happy with that. Okay. So I know I added the same amount of salt to everything. This one tastes significantly saltier. And there are some beans that are really nice and tender and some that are also a little bit like tougher. Interesting. All right, here's the third one. Okay, interesting. This one's my favorite out of it. The beans are nicely evenly seasoned. Not as salty as these. I would say about the same level of seasoning as this, but these seem a lot more evenly cooked than everything. They're nice and tender. Out of these 3, this one's definitely my favorite. I'm gonna go ahead and see. Okay. It's the quick soak method, which is honestly, to me, pretty surprising because I kind of thought a quick soak was a bit of a gimmick and not necessary, but it seems like it actually works really well. I'm gonna see what this one was. Okay, so this is a soaked overnight. And then this really salty one, then yeah, obviously it was cooked. I think that this one was more salty because it did cook for about 20 minutes longer than these 2. And during that time, I think that the water reduced more and caused the salt to be more concentrated and get into the beans. So based off of these results, I think the best option would definitely actually be the quick soak bean. Let me know in the comments what you think about these results and if there's any other tests you'd like to see me do, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss my next videos. Thanks.